work itself would change. So I have a volunteer, otherwise it becomes a voluntold. Somebody, please, your name if you don't mind as well.
Roselle Unger, JFS New Orleans. Staff compliancy without babysitter.
Ooh, accountability. Accountability. You want a mint? Here, right-handed. There we go. All right, somebody, accountability. Somebody else, please. Your name? Oh my gosh. We were classmates yesterday.
I was an improved connection and relationship between the resource development and program teams.
Okay, team health generally, but the siloization that you're speaking of, programming, development, great. And a mint for you. Who else, please?
Board overstepping.
Right? Overstepping, lack of clear boundaries, lack of clear governance. Please. Oh, wait. Another one. There we go. You're in the firing line. Unlimited funding. Okay. Thank you. All of you. So here's the reality. I have this bowl for a reason. I also have more mints, whoever would like. The bowl reminds me a little bit of light dispels the darkness. You are collectively and individually a constant source of light. And think about the work you do every single day in helping affect positively people's lives. And then you got to go inside and do the work. And the collective total of it is exhausting, right? It's exhausting. So we launched an initiative, spoken with 40 executives, hour-long qualitative interviews, and I'm going to touch on just a few of the pain points that are common. Lack of clear direction, lack of clear accountability, everyone named board dynamics. It's not even in my list of 10. Everyone named it. It's also not in my list of 10, funding. Because everybody would say to unlimited funding or limited funding and not enough staff, okay? The pain points that we deal with, more often than not, are symptomatic of root cause issues. And it took me a long time, and frankly, it took me the implementation of these practices I'm going to share with you to realize the firefighting that I was spending my time in as a CEO of Federation, which was just wearing me down. The time spent on that firefighting, more often than not, was ancillary issues demanding the majority of my time. That's what this is about. So, a moment about me. 30 years I've been in the nonprofit space, teaching, sitting at people's bedsides. I ultimately, for 24 years, was the head of advancement and the senior vice president at American Jewish University. If any of you know the stories of the West Coast institutions, it's a little painful right now, but the truth is many of our organizations are going through tectonic changes. I raised hundreds of millions of dollars, then went to the Federation for 5 years of nonstop, Mike? Okay. Nonstop crisis management. How's this? Can you hear me in the back?
Turn it on.
There we go. Now can you hear me? Yes. All right, I will try not to yell. Crisis management. Internal, there was an attempted coup on my appointment 26 days after I arrived. Why? Because the leadership team was angry that I was expecting them to show up at 8 o'clock in the morning. They'd come at 10 and they would leave at 2. It was very, I'm not being dramatic. They thought that they had implemented the flex time of the city of Denver, well, flex time means that if I gotta drop a kid off at 9, I come in at 9 and I work until 6. The hours flex. Doesn't mean I make this stuff up depending on the flavor of the hour. So, then we had, of course, Tree of Life, changed many of our lives. Then COVID. Then in Denver, we had a massacre, not a massacre, I'm sorry, we had a murder at the yeshiva. Then we had the Boulder fires, raised $1 million in an hour, and then spent a year giving that money away. You live in that space. The complicated, painful decisions as to who gets what. And by the end of 22, I was exhausted. I needed to regain my smile. But the great joy, in addition to rebuilding an organization, was that in 2018, I brought entrepreneurial best practices. I attempted to instill them as a CEO for 2 years. Then we hired someone to guide us through that process. And to today, the organization continues to run on those. I left to regain my smile, and I bring the commitment and passion of making your work and frankly your lives better by bringing time-tested entrepreneurial best practices to the nonprofit space. Okay? So after this, and if anyone sends me an email, you will get a free copy of Amplify Impact, a book that's coming out in 6 weeks, I think, on entrepreneurial best practices in the nonprofit space. Thought of EOS's compendium for anybody who's read Traction. Thank you again, Stacy. All right, so let's jump in. We're gonna talk about a little bit of the research. I'm not gonna bore you. This is not an academic study that I'm gonna share. I'm gonna share with you the hypothesis. I'm gonna go into 3 tools: Vision Traction Organizer, a level 10 meeting structure, an IDS, a rhythm for getting to those root cause issues, hopefully to solve them and move forward. And finally, talk about why skills development belongs in every organization. For someone who has gone through every possible iteration of leadership development, they're great experiences, they're just not transformative in the way in which many of us work. And then an invitation, all right? So, I've asked nonprofit CEOs what keeps them up at night, and here's what I ask. Here's what I hear over and over and over again. Unclear roles, who raised that, right? Burnout, did any of you deal with that? I'm not talking vacation tired, I'm talking ala panim, on your face tired. Decisions without data. How many of you are like making it up based on your kishkas? And how many of you, really, honest question, how many of you know the difference between leading indicators and lagging indicators? How many of you don't know that? Great. The truth is, I didn't understand what a KPI was, much less leading versus lagging indicators. So how do we build data that shows us not that we are $100,000 short on our campaign at the 11th hour, but at the 2nd hour that we've got staff that aren't actually reaching out to donors consistently to raise that money? Too many priorities. How many of you deal with that? Right? How many of you may or may not have a strategic plan and a donor walks in and says, I'm going to give you a big chunk of money, and now suddenly everything is blown up, right? Or a board member just read an article and says, I think we need to be doing this. I love board members, right? And board members are important, but it's about alignment. Recurring unsolved issues. Last quarter's issues or this quarter's and next quarter's, etc. And lastly, conflict avoidance. How many of you have got a structured, methodical means by which to have hard conversations to grow people up, and sometimes to grow people out of your organization? Okay? All right, so organizations are solving for the symptom, not the system. Here's what I mean by that. Too many priorities. More often than not, well, we've got to bring in someone, a prioritization session, that's the default. Or unclear roles. Let's just update all of our job descriptions. Or as a CEO, here's what I used to do, and I did it when I ran a department. Every 6 months, I'd play with an org chart. I was a master of every org chart software there was. Because if I just got it right, or burnout, we'd launch a wellness program. As opposed to realizing that keeping people in the seats that tie to what their innate abilities are and where they can grow to, align them for their greatest value, is what's going to drive wellness first and foremost. So, my hypothesis was, and it's being proved out, that we spend our time on these symptoms, and if we can get to structural deficiencies, vision, which is around an organization's lack of clear and shared direction throughout the organization. If we can improve execution, which is the discipline and the infrastructure to translate direction into reliable, measurable action forward, or diagnostic, the ability to actually lean into the root issues, have hard conversations, not conversations limited by the siloization that Catherine's talking about, that we can actually at least increase the likelihood of solving those issues once and for all. So, here's an example of how a symptom gets applied or it manifests itself in these buckets. Too many priorities, okay? Well, from a vision standpoint, if there's no shared picture of success, I don't know where I'm going to be in a year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, and I write my vision statement in a smart manner, which doesn't mean I'm eradicating homelessness, but I'm actually going to reduce homelessness by 10% in this county where I effectuate change. I have a much higher likelihood of bringing that about. Without that, the board, staff, articles, YouTube, everybody's pulling the organization in a variety of different directions. Maybe the symptom plays out from an execution standpoint. Maybe you do have the vision, but there's no mechanism on a quarterly basis to check, are we actually moving incrementally closer towards those? Psychologically, we function in a 90-day world. How many of you are already planning for Thanksgiving or next Passover, God forbid, right? None of us. We're thinking about summer. That's about it. We live in a 90-day world. So our priorities have to be constructed incrementally towards that. Or maybe the too many priorities relates to diagnostic. Here's the hardest word in the nonprofit language. No. Leaders can't say why the direction feels unclear. They can't say no. They can't create limiting factors. Okay, let me tell you a few stories. Too many priorities. Until there were 3. Worked with a nonprofit, mid-size. It's 17 strategic priorities. Okay? We put processes in place. We also create a parking lot that says, yeah, these are important, but not now. It was communicated from the leadership in concert with the board, and now there's a focal point in which what execution looks like and what it will take to accomplish that. And there is a shared alignment around a 90-day set of rocks, think rocks, priorities, Stephen Covey. 3 organizational priorities: ownership, accountability. Who's got to get the fill in the blank done? Checked on every single week, because I'm accountable to my colleagues. I'm going to come in and report honestly if it's on track or off track. And if it's off track, I'm not getting whipped with wet noodles. There's an issue. Name it. We're in it together, right? We review measurables on a scorecard that relate to getting stuff done. Our priorities tracked open and honestly with one another. And we resolve the issues on a weekly basis to ensure that we are tracking effectively towards that destination, short-term, mid-term, long-term. Became very clear, and when the donor walks in and says, I want to start this new initiative and here's $500,000, we can say with confidence, with the board backing, not applicable, or not now, right? That aligns vision. Fewer priorities, less is more. I've got a client who has a leadership team of 14 people. Can you imagine that? It's also a very large nonprofit, 1,000 employees, $300 million. The CEO, don't get me started on one-on-ones, folks. The CEO is meeting one-on-one with all of his leadership team every single week, right? Because that's the model he inherited. So we created a leadership team utilizing what's called the level 10 meeting, which means we're now not the sole decider as a CEO. We are a leadership team where we are making decisions as a brain trust. And the majority of those meetings were gone. All the one-on-ones gone. 1 hour-and-a-half meeting. He filled his calendar with 2 1-hour meetings so that somebody needs something to sign or there's a strategic issue, 15-minute conversation. Sometimes that happens. But all those one-on-ones, gone. Now, one-on-ones, my opinion, work well for mentorship, not for management. Because who ends up owning all the monkeys that come into your office? You do. So we made that change. 5 to 10 hours returned. In that instance, he actually regained 12 hours of his week. The team learned to decide. There was transparency about big issues. The stress of death by 1,000 decisions was lifted. Think about it, folks. Every decision you make takes energy. How many of you are like energized and ready to go at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Mostly none of you. How many of you know that pain about 2 inches behind the center of your forehead? I mean that seriously. That's called processing exhaustion, at least my terminology, but it's real. Another one, a parking lot. The same issues resurface every single meeting. Some are urgent, I gotta get this solved. We create 2-tier issues list. I'm gonna go into the details of this. These are important topics for discussion or debate. They may be challenges, they may be opportunities, but we get the static out of our head, create lists, create a construct to engage in open and honest conversation, and we solve problems. Every decision discussed, I'm going to talk about in a little while, has to be driven towards a solution, because no solution is a solution. You've made a decision by not making a decision. And an imperfect decision more often is better than a perfect decision or no decision waiting for that perfection. All right, so we created this meeting rhythm with issues. The meetings are shorter, they solved issues, started working over a chunk of them. In my organization, the first year at Jewish Colorado, utilizing these tools, we solved 297 issues. I'm not making it up. We tracked every issue solved, many of which had been plaguing the organization for years. All right, now the data. So I said to you, I've interviewed 40 nonprofit CEOs. Here's what the data is beginning to show. Now, I want to be clear, this is not statistically reliable and valid. These are hour-long qualitative interviews, which, by the way, anybody wants to participate, I would appreciate it. I'm working towards about 75 or so. But thus far, 67% are reporting too many priorities at once is the dominant pain point. 70% name it as a top 3 challenge. 57% over-reliance on key individuals. I spoke to one executive, runs a camp, he's been there 28 years. His number one fear, he gets so exhausted he can't do it, or his facilities manager leaves, because there's no institutional knowledge that's been created between him and the organization and the facilities manager and the organization. 47% recurring unresolved issues persist despite leader awareness. That doesn't make leaders bad. That means there are system flaws that prevent solutions being solved. All right, I'm gonna back up for 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Any questions? Any like aha moments thus far? None required, just pausing. Yes,
I just have one quick question.
Yeah.
The level 10 meeting.
I'm gonna go into it
Okay.
and walk you through, please.
I have a question about the parking lot, because I feel like when we put things on the parking lot, then they just stay there and then ultimately they linger out. Do we
Yep.
just assume then they're
No.
not important in the first place?
They are very important.
Okay,
They're just not timely.
right.
In this system I'm gonna share with you, I'm gonna talk about a short-term and a long-term issues list, where those are tackled and why they are, okay? Generally, the long-term issues are strategic or not applicable now. How many of you think about a lot of your job is about predicting? You don't think about it. Like, we have to predict. What am I spending my time on right now? And those issues on the long-term issues list are the things that I don't need to spend my time on right now, because things on the short-term issue, what affects the next 90 days, I gotta solve those because they prevent me from getting my rocks, my priorities done, okay? All right, so here's what I experienced. And I wanna say this really clearly, because some of you know me, some of you don't wanna know me, some of you know the institutions. I had a wonderful 24-year run at American Jewish University. I worked with incredible people who had inherited and perpetuated not bad methodologies, just not the best methodologies. They were the best methodologies maybe in 1985, but maybe not in 2026. And so the typical strategic planning process, what I refer to as static, meant that the leadership team, often members of faculty, members of the board, and I've seen this in other types of organizations, gathered every 2 weeks for an entire year. Think about the resources there. And you know what it produced? A really beautiful 5-page document. And we accomplished a lot. I don't want to minimize any of that. But I once asked somebody, 2 years in, the environment's changed. Yeah, we just sort of let things, we'll introduce other. Like, fine, but it wasn't intentional. It wasn't deliberate. It wasn't iterative. A static strategic planning process, and I say this with love and affection, there are other methodologies, and they may work for lots of organizations. This is what I found works, so I do speak respectfully of others who share other methodologies. But my observation of that, and what I chose not to bring to the Federation in Colorado, was a process that was written once and referenced rarely. That lived in a board portal. Don't we all love board portals? They were updated annually, maybe. Disconnected from the weekly calendar. I said to you, we live in a 90-day world, right? What we really do is we live in this world today. And thinking about how am I planning my week at best, but certainly my day, most people are driven by what? Their email. Right? This turns a little bit of that on its head. Now it's not the email and the demands, those are important, but I've got 3 things that I've got to get done, because those 3 things build towards my rocks for the quarter, towards the goals for the year. Now every single day I'm making decisions about what's important strategically, not from a firefighter standpoint. And it measures intention, not outcomes. I am measuring what I intend to do, and then I can effectively evaluate, is it working or not? Not Holy Toledo, it is December, and we are $100,000 shy on our campaign. Difference, dynamic. The work actually requires, what the work actually requires, in my estimation, you are living in a very challenging environment, working in a very challenging environment, right? A living document that shapes how you allocate your time. That's the real resource you got. How you allocate your time on a weekly basis. Lives on a leadership team's desk. it shapes the decisions that everybody on a leadership team makes daily. It's revisited every 90 days. It is alive, it is vibrant, a new opportunity. We can have a hard conversation to determine whether it fits or it doesn't fit. We've got sacred time to address those strategic opportunities or big challenges. It drives the meeting rhythm every single week. And it measures the right handful of things. We don't need a 100-point dashboard. At the leadership team, we need 5 to 15 numbers that evidences whether or not we're going to get to our destination. Is the patient getting better or worse? Unfortunately, I've had a sick aunt, so I've been in the hospital a lot of late. When a doctor walks into that room, do they study the entire history of that patient? I'm not a doctor, so forgive me. I think they look at pulse ox, temperature, like 5 or 6 key numbers that say whether this patient is doing a little bit better or not. That's what you want at the leadership team level. You build those out then throughout the organization. The tools of dynamic planning. I'm going to give you 3 tools that were transformative. Okay? First of all, you have in front of you what's called a vision traction organizer. Forgive me, EOS has a language, but you know what? We all have a language. The challenge is, I'm going to go back to Catherine's example, programming might have a language, and development may have a language. And now you're arguing about whose language is right as opposed to shared language. So EOS has a shared language. Instead of a strategic plan, you have vision traction organizer. Vision is the strategy. You in your organizations, I would argue, don't need a 50-page McKinsey report. God love McKinsey. And you don't need a 20-page business plan. This is an 8-question vision traction organizer, strategic plan and business plan. I'm going to teach you the level 10 meeting, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about solving issues. Okay, the vision VTO isn't a strategic plan. I love this. I wrote it. It's a living will. It's a living will. You are implying what the future of the organization is in a living manner. It is a covenant. I mean that in the deepest of sense. When you take $1 from a donor, and whether it's $5 or $5 million, somebody worked hard for that money. And you are engaging in a trusting relationship between the donor, the government, and the community, and the recipient of those services. And so being judicious and thoughtful and dedicated and clear about where the organization is going is a holy act. I mean that. I feel that deeply. It's a statement of where the organization is going. It is written so clearly that everyone at your side and the person who comes after you can carry it forward. 8 questions, 1 page, 2 sides. So it's come, some of you, I don't know who, have raised questions of succession. Like, what's going to happen when I can't do this any longer? Right? What am I going to leave to the inheritor? What is the head of that camp at 28 years going to do between now and next week to ensure that when the summer ends, when he can no longer do it, somebody can just pick it up? I sometimes think, like, are we resistant because we put so much passion and sometimes, frankly, folks, ego into the importance of our roles that we're apprehensive to put it all down on paper because it raises the sense that maybe we're now dispensable? Just being a little honest. When we hold information, it is a mechanism of raising our importance. When you see somebody in your organization unwilling to write things down, ask the question of yourself. Why? Am I not giving them the skills? That's sometimes part of it. Are they protecting their seat? That's also sometimes part of it. So the 8 questions you have, what are your core values? Okay, I have no doubt that many of your organizations, some of your organizations, or at least one, have beautiful words on the walls or coffee cups or shirts that say, we stand for X. Here's the challenge. In a nonprofit environment, we've got lots of beautiful words that talk about the values of our work relative to the external community. Sometimes there is a disconnect between those values and the behaviors that we see inside the organization, okay? So these values are not those beautiful, big, bold, aspirational values that we put out to the community. And what I do with nonprofits is we differentiate. You want to keep those? Fabulous. Tikkun Olam, Gesundheit hate. But I want to know, what are the values that says this is what it means to work here? That's what shapes culture. Culture is not complicated, folks. It's defining the behavioral norms and then upholding it and holding people accountable to it and modeling it and helping people grow up or grow out. So we always start with core values, then a core focus, think mission. But it is, what is your purpose, cause, or passion, your why? And then where do you apply that? So on your sheet, you see core focus, you also see niche. That homeless organization that's trying to eradicate homeless, well, no. They do it in Denver County, and they do an amazing job, but let's not be delusional, because when I take my core focus and amplify that over time, that's my mission. That's the net result of what I'm going to impact. So yeah, if I do bring all of my passion and conviction and apply it here over a 10-year period of time, or maybe it's 5 years or 20 years, the net effect of that is going to be a reduction of homelessness by 10% in Denver County that I can now measure incrementally every year, every quarter. That's a powerful tool when speaking to donors, to engaging staff. By the way, 50% of staff, based on the RAND Corporation, RAND Research, said that they don't care what the purpose is of the organization. 30% didn't have a clue of what they did relative to the mission of the organization, right? So this becomes not a document that you then, 50-page document to bring people along. It's a 2-page document that says, my work ties to here. Long term, it's written in a smart manner, because everyone know what SMART is: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely. I want to evidence my progress towards that destination. Then your marketing strategy. It's not about a marketing plan. Who is your primary target? Not all of your targets, your primary target. What are the 3 unique things you bring to that space that differentiate you from others? And then there's a proven process, and there is a guarantee. A proven process is a visual representation of what you take your clients through as an experience. It's actually a very interesting, I encourage you to look up proven process. You're going to get a lot of great images. For some of my social service agencies, once they document visually the process that they want their clients to go through, they realize there are lots of gaps, especially handoff from service to service to service. It's a powerful visual of what's working or not working. Okay, then we know what we're going to do in 10 years. Now what does the organization need to look like in 3 years? Starts with revenue, profit, or surplus, or contingency, however you define that. Your measurables, not 100, not even 3, preferably 1 or 2. And then the various characteristics that the organization needs to take on and achieve in 3 years. Okay, we're going to have another location, or we're going to launch a new department, or this new priority. Whatever those things you can visualize to get closer to that 10-year, we chart them out, we lay them out. I don't need a full comprehensive analysis and the viability of every one. It's getting the stuff out of our heads, because we have a sense of how we can progress. Then from there, once we have a picture of what the organization needs to look like in 3 years, it's easier now to set goals for the year. We can chart our path towards that 3-year picture. not with 60 goals or 22 goals, 5 to 7 goals. Non-negotiable at the company or organization level. Becomes a very powerful tool to engage the board, either before or after, depending on the dynamic, to align where you're going. And then we live in a quarterly world. What are the things we've got to get done this quarter? Again, 5 to 7. There's ownership. There's accountability. And then if I'm on the leadership team and I run the development department and I've got 2 rocks, maybe the revenue goal is tied to me, plus I'm going to launch a new campaign and I'm going to kick off the gala, right? Well, I don't have to do all that work, but I'm accountable for all that work. That work, those priorities, those rocks, shape what my team now has to execute towards. And they build theirs accordingly. And what happens? There's organizational alignment. In time, everybody through the organization is working through those shared directions, 1 year, 3 year, 10 year. All right, and then we create that parking lot. Lanya?
Correct. Thank you.
We create a parking lot for all those strategic issues. The strategic issues that are going to prevent us from getting to the 3 year, to the marketing strategy, or even the 1 year, but we're going to deal with it second quarter of the year. Okay? All right, here's what I'd like you to do. A little bit of a test or challenge. Choose one of these 3 in one sentence. Write down on the sheet of paper. You can use the VTO or the notepad. What does this organization exist to do? What does your organization exist to do? Don't write a dissertation, single sentence. Or, what are we becoming if we don't lose our nerve? Or, what are the 3 things that must be true by the end of the year? You choose. And for a moment or two, you can share more on the challenge of being that clear with a friend or new friend next to you.
You got 20.
Oh, 20 minutes.
20 for the whole thing. Do you want to do? Yeah.
Got it. Don't we go to 5:30? 5:30.
5:30.
Oh my gosh. We go to 5:30. All right, so I've now got 20 minutes and then 15 minutes of questions. Got it. Okay. I'll give you another 30 seconds. I brought 40 of them. I have more at my booth, but I brought 40. I'm sorry. I'm delighted. Everything I can share, I can send electronically as well.
What a great reason to go to your booth.
Yeah. Okay, how many of you found this exercise, any of these questions, just hard? To be that clear and focused? Anybody? I see some nodding heads. Yeah. Who answered a question and you'd be willing to share how you answered it? Please. And your name, please.
Greg Rosenblatt, Jewish Family
Oh,
Service.
sorry, I should give you that.
Greg Rosenblatt, Jewish Family Service of Atlantic Kidney County, New Jersey. I kind of went with the 1 year plan, but I only wrote one thing down.
Okay.
To me, this upcoming fiscal year, which starts in July, compliance is going to be non-negotiable in our agency.
Okay, compliance. Was it hard to identify the other 2?
I just got mixed up.
Okay, that's all right. Anybody else? Offer a thought. Please.
The core focus, just wrote provide affordable housing for low to moderate income earners.
Okay. And how easy was it to distill it down? How easy was it to distill it down? Very easy. Awesome. All right. So often for teams, the core focus is not that difficult. It grows out of your mission statement, and for many of you, your organizations, I assume, have been around for a few weeks, right? The long term is a little bit harder because most of our vision statements are written in an aspirational manner, but not in a manner that's easy to measure progress towards. And the one-year plan, that's where it gets tricky, right? That's where it gets really tricky. Because many of our organizations have grown out of crisis or emergent needs, right? Or structural changes that have grown out of other reasons. And you suddenly have sort of this octopus effect of an organization that may or may not tie to a clear singular mission that delivers a limited set of deliverables. So we go through a facilitation exercise to bring clarity. Then, here's where, for me, sort of the juice came. Understanding, well, let me be a little bit personal here. I was responsible for our leadership team meetings for a number of years. And here was how we set our agenda. I'd send out an email, who's got an issue, 2 weeks in advance. I'd go around to people's office. Guess what I would hear? Crickets. I'd send out an email a week before the meeting. Crickets. And then I would ask one or two others the day before. No real response. And then I'd get a phone call 15 minutes before the meeting. Jay, what's the agenda? And frankly, we made it up half the time. And in that setting, there were 8 people sitting around for an hour and a half. Think about how much time was wasted and how many missed opportunities. And it became very frontal. So-and-so would present, and then it was siloed. So if I presented something and somebody had a critical thought about it, constructive criticism, hopefully, maybe not always, of course, my ego, right? I live in my silo, it's my business, right? So the defenses go up, anger, decisions maybe get made, but then there's the meeting after the meeting, which rebuilds all the decisions, right? I almost brought, maybe I should have brought my zoo. I have a zoo of stuffed animals. One is a squirrel, because we spend a lot of time in meetings squirreling, it's a reminder. I have a horse, because enough beating the dead horse. I love the laughter, it's affirming what you're experiencing. I have an elephant. There's always the elephant in the room. I have a beautiful black and white cuddly cow, because there are always sacred cows. What else do I have? I have a goat, because there's always a scapegoat. One of my favorites is the frog. Sometimes you just gotta eat the frog. Have you heard that expression? No. Do the hardest thing first thing in the morning. And in a meeting, sometimes I just gotta swallow it. I didn't get it done. There's a whole slew of them. At any rate, there's a meeting rhythm. Here's the agenda. I don't have to make it up. And it drives accountability and outcomes. Segue, not the one you ride. It's just simply good news. Personal and professional. Because it's nice to share that I had a great weekend away, but I don't need to tell you about the hotel and the restaurant and the drive and, right? Oh, and by the way, my wife and I, we got in a little bit of an argument, and it turns into a therapy session for 20 minutes. No, I had a great weekend. I went up to such and such location. Anybody wants the information? I'd love to share the itinerary with you. End of conversation. 5 minutes total for a team. Quick, good news. Scorecard, those measurables. What does the leadership team need to know to determine if the patient is getting better or worse? And it's not story time, folks. You're either on track or you're off track relative to the goals that you set. And if you're off track, Stacy, what do?
Well, we just say done, not done.
Great.
At the beginning of each meeting, and if it's something that, needs further discussion, it goes to the issues list.
Exactly. You get it.
Thank
I
you.
called on you. Pop
Done,
quiz.
done, I don't wanna hear anything.
If scorecard, if the measurable is off track, I don't tell a whole Geschichte. That means story, right? Dramatic story more often than not. It just goes down to the issues list. And then we build our issues list based on what's off track on the scorecard. Rocks. Moment of truth, folks. Am I getting my stuff done or not? This isn't punishment. This is just simply, we agreed that we're going to set these as the priority. Are everybody's priorities on track or not? So I go through mine, I read them. On track or off track? If it's off track, where does it go? Issues list. No story. Client or employee headlines. I don't need to give a whole story about how satisfied, Molly was because we honored her great-grandmother at whatever. Great. Had an event, she was happy. Okay. Or we got a call, she's not happy. I don't need to go into the story hour, but it is of concern, and therefore it's added to the issues list. Oh, I already spoke to her. It's good. We don't have to solve it. To-dos. These are not your and my collective to-dos, including taking to the laundry or whatever that may be. These are simply the to-dos that need to get to done as a result of the solutions that we drive in IDS. Okay? Everything's about solution. So, then we spend, this is a leadership team meeting, time frame, 90 minutes. The leadership team is spending 60 minutes a week solving issues. It is liberating. It is liberating. And then we conclude. How did we do? We review the to-dos that need to get to done by next week. We review cascading messages, things that we've made decisions about that need to be communicated. What's the message? Who's going to write it? Who's going to communicate it, and by when? Non-negotiable. I'm not sitting on that notice to employees where everyone's going to be angry for 6 months. We agreed it needs to go out and we need to move forward. Accountability. And then we rate the meeting. It's called a level 10 meeting because we're aiming for 10. Okay? We're aiming for 10, but we're not killing ourselves out of pursuit of perfection. And what's amazing is that over time it goes from 4 to 6 to 8 to 9.5. Some of my most complicated teams, so many of their issues are resolved because, I'm talking team health issues, because they are now working as a team to solve their real issues. So how many of you read Patrick Lencioni or have read Patrick Lencioni? He is the godfather of team health. He talks about vulnerability-based trust. That's what this is about, right here. The degree to which I can be open to the real issues preventing me and us from accomplishing what we need. When someone says, Jay, I keep hearing that there's some dissatisfaction with the service, I'm not putting up my guard. I do have a turtle, by the way. I'm not going to crawl into my shell. Right? Okay, I want to be the best I can be. I want the department to be. What's the issue? Right? It's all for the greater good of the organization. It's hard. It's hard. It's asking people to do work differently. We're going to lean into identifying what the issue is. More often than not, when you build your issues list, the issues that you identify are not the root issues. So when someone says, Steve is in the wrong seat, or Steve is leaving, okay, is it a hiring issue? Well, why is that an issue? Oh, well, he's not going to do that work. Okay, but why is that an issue? Well, it's going to be the third time this year that seat's been vacant. Okay, well, why is that an issue? Usually there's an exercise called the 5 whys. By the time you get to the third or fourth why, you're realizing that Steve's manager stinks. He doesn't actually know how to manage people. Or he does, but the hiring process is so unstructured, you're not actually clearing or evaluating candidates accurately. And so we've had 3 misfires in a year, right? But most of us blamed most of the hires on ineptitude or crazy. I can tell you how many, I mean this, you know what to.The is? To.The is like self-rebuke. I mean this deeply with pain. I labeled so many of employees that didn't get their stuff done as they were just nutty. Shame on me. Because I was the crappy manager and it was demeaning that I did that. I mean that seriously. I live with that and I live with that pain. It's easy to dismiss a departure as that person's issue and not look at the structural issues that are creating an environment for that person not to succeed. Then we get into the hard discussion. Jay's a lousy manager. Okay, what's the issue? Well, truthfully, I never really got trained on managing. I don't actually know what the difference is between leading and managing. Or you know what? I avoid hard conversations. So I knew that this hire was challenging at about 60 days, but I kind of avoided it. Okay? Then what's the issue? Then we're going to get into the depths of that discussion to solve the issue. What's the issue? Now we got to fill the role, but Jay needs some training. Right? Jay, you do a great job in lots of things, and this has been a train wreck with 3 hires. So we need to support you. Or maybe you can't grow to that next level. Okay? So we're discussing hard in an orchestrated manner, not in a constructed manner, but we don't repeat. We're not politicking, right? I don't have to say what she said because I need that gold star and I'm going to repeat it 3 more times. We say it once, we go around, we contribute, and if we don't have anything to say, we don't. Or if we agree with someone, we just say, I agree with that view. Because we're driving to solutions and somebody has to decide. This is not decision by consensus, although about 98% of decisions are made by consensus. That's fine. But at the end of the day, or at the end of the discussion, somebody has to make the decision, and that's the role of the integrator. That's a whole other conversation. There's a construct, somebody visionary looking out, big relationships, right? And then there's somebody looking in and beating the drum. And usually the visionary doesn't do a very good job. It's uncomfortable for them to have those hard decisions, to have those hard discussions. And so the integrator is the tiebreaker if the leadership team cannot come to a decision. And I was visionary, and so we understood if it was a strategic or a financial or an HR, right? We needed to be on the same page. But otherwise, I let go. And you know what that was? I used the word earlier. It's liberating. I don't have to control everything. We know where we're going. All right. So the VTO sets direction. Level 10, IDS. These are a few of the tools. A note. So most work focuses on the tools. Okay, this is now Jay's imprint. I deeply, firmly believe structure first, people second. But if the individuals around the table are not prepared to do the hard work to grow, doesn't matter what the tools are, they're not going to work. I talk about heart without discipline, which is good intention without traction. But I also talk about discipline without heart. Without heart is a system without a soul. Both are needed. A last note, now we're going to ask some questions about rhythm and then training. Recurring conversations become issue solved once. Leader takes everyone's monkeys, right? The team now knows what it owns. Don't bring your monkeys into my office every week. Put the issues onto the issues list, and we're going to discuss it as a leadership team. Motion without movement now becomes quarterly traction. We step out of the business to work on the business on a quarterly basis. We go entirely through the VTO, not to rebuild it, to make sure that we're still in alignment with where we're going. We set our rocks for the next quarter because we live in a 90-day world, and we need to incrementally pursue those 90-day priorities towards those one-year goals. So we're constantly driving, constantly moving, we're constantly making traction. Traction brings the vision into reality. And lastly, strategy is a document, doesn't live on the shelf. It is a weekly practice. What decisions am I making every single week about how I spend my time that's going to get me a little bit closer towards those strategic objectives, because those are tied directly to the priorities that I and we as a leadership team have set, the rocks. Okay? All right. So, I had a slide about leadership development. Okay, let me touch upon this for a moment, and then I'll come to this. So, the truth is, in my estimation, most of our employees and most of our leadership team members have not learned practical entrepreneurial best practices. I went to an MBA program. Somebody else in the room went to that with me. I don't remember these kinds of practical solutions, like how to get stuff done, how to build team health, how to solve issues, how to set vision and connect it to getting stuff done today. Okay? So I viewed this for my team as an incredible gift of leadership development to teach them skills that ensured, number one, that the organization wasn't dependent upon our implementer, or in this instance, me, relative to my organizations, and that they grew, and we all grew. And that capacity to be better stayed with the organization. What I didn't tell you is I'm not a consultant, and I love consultants. This is just a different approach. I don't come in and look for issues and challenges and prescribe a solution. I'm a teacher of entrepreneurial best practices. I'm a facilitator of really hard conversation, and then I'm a coach to the leadership team to integrate these tools into the organization and frankly into themselves and their own work, okay? So with that, before you go back to your organization, you've got a few minutes to ask questions. Holy Toledo, I'm actually on time. Miracle of miracles. 2 things you can do today. I invite you, I promise there's no sales pitch. If you go to my website, okay, and I'm going to show the QR code, I've built a diagnostic for both for-profit and nonprofit. You'll click on it and you'll choose nonprofit, and it will ask you some questions. It's a narrowed down version of what I do with CEOs over a 45-minute period of time. And it gives you a diagnostic, gives you a score relative to your vision, execution, or diagnostic deficiency, and it'll give you a bit of a summary. And then if you would like, you have an invitation today, tonight, tomorrow. Call me, a 30-minute conversation, okay? That's your discretion. With that, your organization is your organization solving the wrong problems. All right, you've heard enough of me. Who wants a mint? Survive. All right, questions. Please, wait, when will you tell you? Should we pass the mic around?